Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 26th of November of 2023. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, very weird updates, very even strange updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the Black Sea, because according to information we have, the biggest storm ever is going to take place above the Black Sea and above the Crimea during upcoming night and maybe a few days. So this is very important, by the way, because I'm not saying that it's like the United States of America are using like a climate weapon. I'm not saying this. Obviously, everybody and the people who has possibility to make all these things with the weather, to understand the upcoming things with the weather, knew about the upcoming storm in the Black Sea, obviously. But the strange thing is that during the previous few days, the Ukrainians made significant number of attempts to attack Crimea with different types of weapon. Just today we got report that the Russians managed to shoot down two S-200 missiles that Ukrainians were trying to use to damage Crimean Bridge. If you remember, just yesterday and a few days in a row we were talking about the Russian air defense. For example, on the 24th of November, we discussed that the Russians managed to shoot down 13 drones that Ukrainians launched to attack Crimea. And yesterday, the Ukrainians made a lot of attacks to attack the facilities, infrastructure in Crimea with missiles. So we see that the Ukrainians made a lot of attempts right before the beginning of the storm to damage, to test, to overstress the Russian air defense. So obviously those attacks were just test attacks, and now this is, for example, the beginning of the storm in Sochi, very far from the Crimea, very far from like the main epicenter. And for example, and these events took place in the morning. This video we got already at 6 p.m. of the local time. As you can see, the water left the Black Sea, and currently the water is on the territory of Crimea. So like the level of water has already increased. The situation is getting worse and worse, and obviously the Ukrainians will try to use this situation to attack the Crimea one more time. Furthermore, don't forget that during the day the United States Global Hawk was flying above the territory of the Black Sea, trying to collect as much as possible reconnaissance information that later was provided to the Ukrainians. So I'm trying to say that during the highest level of the storm that obviously is going to take part this night, the Russians will be a little bit blind and deaf above the territory of Crimea. And obviously the Ukrainians will try to use the situation to deal as much as possible damage to the Russian ammo depots, warehouses, and even maybe to destroy and to make another attempt to destroy the Russian Crimean Bridge. So this night is going to be very hot, as I understand. Now we are moving to Kyiv, because we also got a lot of very interesting updates from the capital of Ukraine, from Ukraine itself. Today, during some news report, there was like a news show, like where the Ukrainian people were talking about the events in Ukraine and so on. Somebody managed to crack the application, maybe this TV application or something like this, the main station, and somebody published the information about the Ukrainian losses since the beginning of the special military operation. You see this line on the bottom of the screen, and according to this line, the total losses of the Ukrainian soldiers since the beginning of the special military operation, killed and wounded and missed, is around 1,126,652 soldiers. More than 1 million soldiers, according to this line, the Ukrainians lost since the beginning of this operation. Of course, later this line was erased and this episode was removed from this scene, but anyway, very interesting situation. I'm not saying that this is the real numbers, but who knows, maybe that situation was made by the Russian hackers and they provided maybe some reconnaissance intelligence information of the Ministry of Defense, who knows. Furthermore, later we got another very interesting update from very top level Ukrainian authorities. A lot of authorities, a lot of senators of Ukraine start talking about Zaluzhny, and they're saying that Zaluzhny currently doesn't have any plans for the military, for the war, no plan for military actions for the 2024. And a lot of people from Zelensky, let's say, circle request Zaluzhny to leave position of the head of Ukraine army, and as I understand, before the new year comes, Zaluzhny will be dismissed, and probably the Ukrainians and the Ukrainian authorities will blame Zaluzhny in the failed attempt to defend Avdiivka or something like this. But before Avdiivka, let's talk about Kherson direction. According to the Russians, as a result of clashes on Kherson area, the Ukrainians lost significant number of aviation forces. The Ukrainians lost 3 Su-27 and 1 MiG-29. Furthermore, the Russians established complete air superiority above this territory. As a result of, we received today at least 3 geolocated videos of Lancet strikes. On this video, we see how the Russians destroyed another Ukrainian vehicle, probably multi-launch rocket system. A little bit to the south, in the vicinity of Krynki, the Russians managed to destroy another Ukrainian artillery system during the night period of time, when the Ukrainians tried to redeploy this artillery system in front of Krynki and to support their defense forces there. But the Russians managed to discover that artillery position, and as a result of Lancet strike, the entire group of Ukrainian forces with that artillery system was destroyed. A little bit closer to the north, the Russians managed to discover another Ukrainian artillery position. So as you can see, complete superiority. The Ukrainians don't have chances to support their forces on the Russian bank of the river. But when talking about the Russian bank of the river, when talking about village by the name of Krynki, we got 2 important geolocations from this territory. First one was published by the Ukrainian forces. On this video we see how the Ukrainians were bombing and attacking the Russian forces, the edge positions of the Russian forces. And this is very important video from 2 perspectives, at least from several perspectives. First of all, as you can see, this is the edge position of the Russian forces, which we can use to determine the real combat line. This is the first important thing. The second important thing is that there is a snow in this territory, and we can say that 26th of November is the first day when we start receiving the videos with the snow on this territory. And just remember this situation with the snow, because today the Ukrainian sources published the video with 35th Marine Brigades, and according to this video, the Ukrainians are saying that they're in Krynki, that they control Krynki, that everything is okay with them, that they control the situation. But if you take a look at this video, first of all, a few things that we need to mention is that, first of all, there is no snow on this video. The second thing that we should mention is that these soldiers of Ukrainian army are too clean. Their clothes are too clean, their weapon is too clean. So obviously this video was made not in Krynki, or maybe this video was made in Krynki, but a few weeks ago when the Ukrainians just entered this territory, when the Russians didn't expect that attack. So maybe then, and now they just published this video to confirm their presence. But we remember that today we got the first geolocated video how the Ukrainians tried to evacuate their soldiers from this bank of the river, from Krynki, in direction of let's say Ukrainian bank of the river. So maybe from one side they tried to evacuate soldier, but from another side they tried to publish the video that everything is okay and everything is under complete Ukrainian control. Furthermore, from the southern area, just another photo, and then we will move to Zaporozhye area. The Ukrainians state border service published another photo how they managed to capture poor Ukrainians who tried to save their lives and to leave the territory of Ukraine using probably Odessa region, but they were captured, and obviously within the next few days they're going to become new Leopard or Challenger drivers, and they will be sent to Avdiivka or maybe Kupiansk front lines. Now we are moving to Zaporozhye area, where we got some interesting updates. During the previous day, the Ukrainians made few attempts to attack the Russian positions using significant number of armored vehicles and tanks. The Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation reported that as a result of clashes, the Ukrainians during the previous day lost 35 soldiers, 3 armored vehicles, including 1 tank. And on this video, we see those 3 armored vehicles that were trying to attack the Russian positions. They managed to bypass some territory, to bypass minefields, but they managed even to get some tree line, but at some minute the Russians start destroying those Bradleys one by one. On this video, on this episode, we see the destruction of one Bradley. A few minutes later we got the video of destroyed another Bradley. We haven't received the video of destroyed Ukrainian tank that also was reported in the Ministry of Defense, but later the Russians launched their own counter-offensive and the Ukrainians lost some strongholds and trenches on the bottom, on the south of this area. So basically the Ukrainians started their movement something like this. They reached this line, then they moved, start moving from Robotyne. They got this line. The first Bradley was destroyed in this area, then the Ukrainians start moving in direction of Robotyne and the main line, and the next Bradley was destroyed in this area, and after that the Russians launched their own counter-offensive and they managed to capture some 3 lines in the end of this video. So nothing special, just a regular military routine where Ukrainians having losses every single day. Now we are moving to the Avdiivka area, to Donetsk direction. We got some updates as well from this territory. The Russians are saying that as a result of clashes on Donetsk direction, the Ukrainians lost not just in Avdiivka but on Donetsk direction 200 soldiers, 7 armored vehicles including 1 tank and 8 artillery systems, and the level of losses among artillery systems are very heavy. And the reason of that is that Ukrainians every single day try to move more and more forces on this direction, and the situation is so critical for the Ukrainians, so that's why they were forced to bring artillery brigade from new strategical reserves, and I'm talking about 148th artillery brigade. This is a new brigade that the Ukrainians start creation this maybe even autumn, and according to the Ukrainian plans they were planning to build new strategical reserve for, let's say, a defense period of time in winter and early spring. And furthermore, if you remember, yesterday we discussed that Ukrainians, according to some sources, redeployed 116th brigade in Avdiivka direction, but when talking about all these directions, the Ukrainians started the concentration created of new strategical reserves. Not just creation, was the Ukrainians also started regrouping of old formations, like 60th Mechanized Brigade was removed from the combat line, 116 was removed from the combat line for regrouping. Ukrainians 88th Mechanized was removed from Kupinsk direction and returned back for regrouping. And now we have few more brigades of Ukrainian army, like 150th Mechanized, 151st Mechanized, 152nd and 153rd Mechanized brigades, and of course 154. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 new Mechanized brigades and 3 mechanized brigade were removed from the combat line for let's say renewing and redeployment. Also we have like professional infantry brigade. This is not territory brigade but infantry, almost the same but more professional. 141st, 143rd and 144th infantry brigades. Currently the Ukrainians are trying to complete creation, and all these things about mobilizations and so on are about to create new brigades and to fulfill and to renew the level of manpower in the current brigades on the combat line. So anyway, we see that the situation is getting worse, but Ukrainians are building plans for summer and early spring, late spring and summer campaigns of 2024. But when talking about the Russians, they are saying that they are signing more contracts, but to tell the truth, I don't see the real actions like the Ukrainians do in the same direction. So now let's turn back to Donetsk area. We have a video of Ukrainian clashes on the northern plant of chemical plant. During the previous days, the Russians made lots of attempts to storm the chemical plant, but yet we haven't received even a single geolocated confirmation that the Russians managed to enter the first trenches, 3 lines of buildings. But we have the videos from the Ukrainian side. On this video, we have like 3 videos of let's say journey of Bradley in the vicinity of the chemical plant. On this video we see the first video with Bradley, how the Ukrainians were trying to repel the Russian attack, trying to suppress the Russian forces with this machine gun, and probably Bradley managed to suppress the Russians or at least to pin them down. On this video the Bradley was located in this area, and from this position that Bradley was attacking the Russian forces along these railways, so trying to suppress them and not to allow them to concentrate forces and to start storming process. So the Ukrainians trying to prevent this movement, like from the Russian side. After Bradley was out of ammo, Bradley returned back to the chemical plant, and we got the video how that Bradley was moving from the north to the south, probably to some service center to get more weapon, maybe to bring some to evacuated personnel, wounded soldiers or something like this. As you can see on this video, there is no like artillery bombardments or something like this. The Bradley left the combat line easily. After the Bradley entered chemical plant and probably fulfilled its ammo, Bradley returned back to the combat line in direction of Stepova. So that was like the journey. First to chemical plant, then from chemical plant to Stepova to support the Ukrainian forces in this area as well. But on this video we got another geolocation, that Bradley arrived to the area, and the Russians of course managed to discover this armored vehicle, and as a result of some strike, that machine finally was destroyed by the Russian forces. And this is very interesting video because yet I haven't found not a solution. I couldn't understand, I still haven't managed to find out how that Bradley was damaged and destroyed, because as you can see the fire was very close. First there was a fire and then there was explosion, and this video reminds me that Bradley was damaged by the Russian grenade launcher or something like this. You see that there is a distance between Bradley and between the moment of strike, moment of fire. So if that Bradley was destroyed with the grenade launcher, that means that the Russians managed to penetrate the Ukrainian defense belt in Stepova and to get at least and to establish some control over this tree line that goes from Stepova to the chemical plant. So there are very high chances that this is the current progress of the Russian forces, and the Bradley was destroyed. We have some confirmations from the Russian side about their presence in Stepova, not just with infantry. Also we have geolocated confirmation of the presence of the Russian armored vehicle, which confirms that the Russians do have some forces, normal real forces in this area. So we'll see what is going to be next. Furthermore, we got some geolocated updates from the north, from the Ukrainian side published more geolocated videos of FPV drone strikes against the Russians, which confirms the Russian progress in this area. And we have some geolocations from the south. As you remember, the Russians managed to establish 100% control over industrial area. There are few blocks or few streets left to clear. Maybe by the evening of the 26th of November, the Russians have already cleared this territory. Tomorrow we're going to receive some updates. The only video from this territory we have is that the Russian tank, after complete clearing operation in the northern part of industrial area, the tank was returning back to the base, and the Ukrainians attacked the tank with FPV drone. But nothing happened with the tank because he had this, let's say, construction above the top of the tank, and that construction basically saved the tank's life. Another proves that tank is not enough. We need to improve. You need to create a lot of things to defend it, and basically that thing on the top of the tanks saved the life of the personnel and the crew. Also, the Russians during the day made few attempts, successful attempts, to improve their positions on this direction, but there were no real clashes, maybe some rearguard forces of the Ukrainian army, but the Ukrainians left this territory because of very difficulty situation to control this territory. The Ukrainians took a decision to step back, and as I understand, this is not the only, not the last time when the Ukrainians will step back in this area. As I understand, during the next weeks we're going to receive more and more videos of the Ukrainians regrouping closer to the central part, to the Black Chimic and to the chemical plant. The Ukrainians will leave everything that located, let's say, on the right of this yellow line, because it's too difficult to control the artillery system. The Ukrainian artillery systems don't have possibilities to support their forces in this area. The only area the Ukrainians can support is the chemical plant, central part, and so on. So step by step the Ukrainians will be forced to step back if they have brains. If they don't have brains, they will lose another few brigades in this area for useless square meters and so on. Now the most important that Ukrainians have is the manpower, and they need to save the manpower, obviously. Furthermore, the Russians published more details. If you remember, a few days ago we discussed the Russian helicopters, drones, and I asked myself what was the purpose of the usage of this type of weapon. And today we got more details about those helicopters, drones. Basically, the Russians are planning, as I understand, to replace Ka-52 in the very, very far future. Now they're making the first prototypes, or let's say the first steps to replace Ka-52, because Ka-52 are too expensive, and not just that are too expensive, it's too expensive to train pilots, and so that's why it's much cheaper to have drones, helicopter drones with missiles, because the main purpose of Ka-52 is to stay above the territory and to use rockets to destroy armored vehicles. So the first prototypes are going to use missiles. These helicopters, drones are able to attack the distance within 6 kilometers, up to 6 kilometers, and the speed of these drones is around 150 kilometers. So of course, from now the Russians are not able to replace the Ka-52 with these drones, helicopters, but obviously in 10 years, if they continue developing and investing in this technology, obviously they're gonna reach the let's say the technical characteristics of Ka-52s, at least very close to them, and then this is going to be another significant progress of the Russian military technologies in this direction. We will bypass Bakhmut Artyomovsk area because during the previous day we haven't received almost anything from this territory, just a few videos of clashes along the railways in the vicinity of Andreevka. The Ukrainians were sending some reinforcements, some groups closer to the railways, but the Russians, using the drones with night vision, managed to discover them and to destroy that group. So nothing special. The only thing we can note is that the Russians are using drones with night vision, start using this type of drones massively all over the combat line, and of course was another step, another development that increased the Ukrainians' losses significantly. When talking about Liman and Kupiansk front line, we haven't received from Liman even a single geolocation, so just the numbers of 60 soldiers losses. And when talking about Kupiansk, we got more and more details and understand the next days are going to be very hot in this direction. First of all, this is the area where the Ukrainians start using the Abrams tanks. We have already discussed this piece of news, and as I understand, the situation is very critical if the Ukrainians were forced to use the tanks. And obviously this is going to be another media damage for the Ukrainians and for the United States, because obviously these tanks will be destroyed sooner or later. We're going to start receiving these videos, and obviously the Russians will start hunting for these tanks. Furthermore, the sources are saying about the very heavy clashes in Tinkovka itself. The Russians are storming this territory, and according to some sources, the Russians managed to dig in deeper and to bypass the territory in 2.5 kilometers. The Ukrainians are forced to send more and more reserves in Tinkovka to slow down and to stop the Russians. For now, it's just messages, telegram messages without any geolocations. The only geolocation we have is another death road between Stepova Novoselka and Ivanovka, with at least 2 armored vehicles of Ukrainian forces that were destroyed during the clashes for this foothold. Maybe the number of armored vehicles in this area will be increased, destroyed, but for now we have just 2 armored vehicles, and this is the situation. So as you can see, the situation is getting very interesting in Ukraine. Zaluzhny is going to be dismissed very soon, obviously by the president of Ukraine. It is very interesting to see the reaction of Ukrainian forces. The Ukrainians started creation of another strategical reserves group. This strategical reserve is not so big in comparison with the strategical reserve in the beginning of this year. There was a significant number, maybe 3 times more brigades in comparison with now. Obviously that means that Ukrainians are not planning to start any offensive operation, and they're creating these reserves just to hold the Russians and to use these small groups to close the problems on this or that front line. This night is going to be very difficult. The storm is going to be the storm of the century, and I think that Ukrainians will try to use the situation to damage maybe even to destroy Crimean Bridge. Avdiivka, the Russians have significant progress, and obviously the Russians are going to establish control over this territory as soon as possible. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.